I'm Megan Walsh, 34, standing on the marble steps of my new $5.2 million Hamptons estate, keys and ownership papers clutched in my trembling hand. The ocean breeze carries the salt-tinged scent of victory. I flash back to my father's cutting words. You'll never own a house like your brother. A sleek BMW pulls into the circular driveway. Jason's here. The shock freezing his face as he realizes what's happening is worth every penny of the all-cash offer I made. My revenge story involves betrayal, manipulation, and family secrets, and it's just beginning. Before I dive into my story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button if you've ever been underestimated by family, and subscribe to catch more tales of sweet success against all odds. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. Growing up in our modest colonial house in Fairfield, Connecticut, I learned early that my place in the family hierarchy was firmly beneath my brother Jason. 1 year older than me, Jason was the undisputed golden child of our household. Our parents, Robert and Catherine Walsh, never tried to hide their preference. Dad, a high school football coach turned insurance salesman, saw in Jason the athletic prowess he'd always dreamed of. Mom, an elementary school teacher, doted on him endlessly, making excuses for his every shortcoming while holding me to impossible standards. Jason has a natural gift, my father would boast to neighbors when my brother made a decent play in a football game. Meanwhile, my straight A's were met with a perfunctory nod, and that's what we expect from you. When I was 12, I won the school science fair with a project on compound interest and investment strategies, an early sign of my financial acumen. My parents skipped the award ceremony because Jason had football practice, not a game practice. When I showed them my blue ribbon that evening, Mom said, "That's nice, dear," before turning back to Jason, who was recounting how he'd completed a perfect pass. For my 13th birthday, I received practical gifts, clothes, school supplies, a modest watch. 2 months later, Jason turned 14 and got the latest gaming system, a new mountain bike, and a lavish party. When I asked why the disparity, Mom said, "Jason needs more encouragement. Things come harder for him." By high school, the pattern was firmly established. I joined the business club, started a small service reselling textbooks to students, and consistently maintained top grades. Jason struggled academically, but remained the family star because of his position on the football team, despite being a second-string player most of the time. During my junior year, I entered the Young Entrepreneurs State competition with a detailed business plan for a student savings app. Against steep competition, I won first place and a $2,000 scholarship. The same weekend, Jason's team lost their game, but he had made one decent tackle. Guess which achievement dominated dinner conversation for weeks? "Football teaches character," my father lectured. "These business competitions are fine, but they don't build the same resilience." The only family member who truly saw me, was my grandmother, Lillian, Mom's mother. A widow who had managed her own small accounting firm in an era when women rarely led businesses, Grandma Lillian recognized my aptitude immediately. On my 16th birthday, while my parents gave me a practical wallet, Grandma Lillian presented me with a beautiful leather-bound journal. "For your business ideas," she whispered, her eyes twinkling. "I've watched you, Megan. You have the mind of a strategist and the heart of a leader. Don't let anyone dim your light." I filled that journal with concepts, market analyses, and financial projections that would later become the foundation of my success. When I showed my parents some of my ideas, Dad chuckled. "Ambitious, but business is cutthroat. Jason's more likely to succeed. He understands how to be a team player." Senior year brought college applications. Despite my 4 gigapascals, leadership positions, and entrepreneurial experience, my parents balked at paying for top-tier business schools. Yet they readily agreed to finance Jason's education at Princeton, despite his mediocre grades, because he got in on a partial athletic scholarship. The message was clear: Jason was the investment worth making. My high school graduation should have been triumphant. Valedictorian, scholarship recipient, accepted to Cornell's business program, which I would attend with financial aid and my own savings. At the ceremony, After I delivered my speech, my parents spent more time congratulating Jason's friends' parents than celebrating with me. That night, I added a promise to my business journal. One day, they'll regret underestimating me. I had no idea then just how spectacularly that promise would be fulfilled. Cornell's sprawling campus became my sanctuary, a place where achievement was measured by merit rather than family politics. While Jason attended Princeton with our parents covering his tuition, housing, and providing a generous monthly allowance, I cobbled together scholarships, student loans, and worked 3 part-time jobs. Morning shifts at the campus coffee shop, afternoon hours at the business school's administrative office, and weekend gigs as a virtual assistant for local businesses. My schedule was punishing classes from 9 to 2, work until 8, then studying until midnight, but I thrived on the independence. For the first time, my success was entirely my own. During freshman orientation, I met Rachel Chen, a sharp-witted finance major from California with a similar drive. Unlike the competitive nature of most business school friendships, Rachel and I formed a genuine bond, supporting each other through brutal exam periods and celebrating our respective victories. "Your family sounds like they're straight out of a Dickens novel," Rachel commented after I shared stories from home during a late-night study session. "You know that's not normal, right? Parents are supposed to, support all their children." I'd shrugged it off, but her words planted a seed of recognition that would later bloom into clarity. While Jason pledged an elite fraternity and spent his weekends partying, I invested my limited free time developing a small e-commerce platform. By sophomore year, my site connecting student artists with potential buyers was turning a modest profit, which I immediately reinvested. During winter break of my second year, I returned home to find Jason unexpectedly there as well. He had failed 2 classes and was on academic probation. Yet somehow, my parents spun this as evidence of Princeton's rigorous standards rather than Jason's neglect of his studies. "College is about more than grades," my father insisted over dinner. "Jason is networking with future leaders." I bit my tongue and retreated to my room, working on a new app concept, a financial tracker specifically designed for college students managing limited budgets. The project consumed my winter break and much of the following semester, but the results were worth it. By the end of junior year, I had refined the app into a sleek, user-friendly platform. With Rachel's encouragement, I pitched it to several tech companies. To my shock and delight, a growing fintech startup offered $50,000 for the concept and code, with potential royalties if they developed it further. I returned home for Thanksgiving of senior year with a cashier's check and a contract, vibrating with excitement to share my first major business success. $50,000? My mother's eyes widened as I explained the deal during Thanksgiving dinner. For one shining moment, I saw something I'd craved my entire life, genuine pride in her expression. Then Jason cleared his throat. "That's actually perfect timing," he said, setting down his fork. "I've been working on a business venture with some fraternity brothers, a premium service connecting graduates with job opportunities in their alumni networks. We need about $30,000 for initial development and marketing." My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming before my father even opened his mouth. "Megan, this is an opportunity to help your brother establish himself. Family supports family." "But this is my money," I protested. "I worked on that app for over a year. And now you can invest it in your brother's future," my mother said, as if this were the most natural conclusion. "Jason will pay you back once they start generating revenue." Under immense pressure and guilt-tripping, "We've supported you your whole life, and this is what family does," I relented. I wrote Jason a check for $30,000 with a signed agreement that he would repay the loan within 2 years. 3 months later, Jason pulled up to our parents' house in a brand new Audi. "What happened to the business venture?" I demanded, watching my hard-earned money sitting in his driveway in the form of German engineering. "We pivoted strategies," Jason replied smoothly. "Having the right image is essential for attracting the clients we want. The business is still happening." When I confronted my parents with the obvious misuse of my investment, they closed ranks around Jason. "You misunderstood the timeline," my father claimed. "These things take time to develop. Besides," my mother added, "you should be happy that your success is helping your brother find his way." Back at Cornell, I fumed to Rachel about the betrayal. "They're gaslighting you," she said plainly. "This isn't normal family dynamics. This is emotional abuse and financial exploitation." "But they're my family," I replied weakly. "Family doesn't mean letting people treat you like an ATM," Rachel countered. "You need boundaries, Megan." Rachel's perspective was the first step in my awakening. I began to see my family's treatment not as normal but as systematically undermining. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in finance and business management, my parents attending the ceremony, but spending most of it commenting on how Jason might graduate next year if his business takes off. I accepted a position at Goldman Sachs in their investment division, a prestigious role that required moving to New York City. As I packed my modest belongings, I made two promises to myself. I would never again give money to Jason, and I would build a life so successful that even my parents couldn't deny my worth. I had no idea that this resolution would be tested repeatedly, or that the pattern of betrayal was just beginning. New York City embraced me with its frenetic energy and endless possibilities, a stark contrast to the suffocating confines of my family dynamics. My apartment in Murray Hill was tiny, barely 400 square feet, with a kitchen the size of a closet, but it was mine, paid for with my own salary, decorated according to my own taste, without anyone telling me I was doing it wrong. At Goldman Sachs, I threw myself into the work with ferocious determination. While other first-year analysts complained about the grueling hours, I thrived on them. 80-hour weeks meant 80 hours away from my family's voices in my head. 80 hours building expertise that would become my armor and weapon. I arrived first in the mornings, stayed latest at night, and volunteered for the complex projects others avoided. Within 6 months, senior managers were requesting me for their teams. By my first annual review, my supervisor noted that I was performing at the level of associates with twice my experience. "You have an unusual aptitude for identifying undervalued assets," he commented. "Keep developing that." It was during a particularly complex analysis of emerging market investments that I caught the attention of Diana Maxwell, a senior investment banker with a reputation for brilliance and ruthlessness in equal measure. Diana was a legend at the firm, one of the few women to break into the upper echelons of leadership, known for her unerring market instincts and her unwillingness to suffer fools. After presenting my analysis to a client team, Diana asked me to stay behind. "That connection you made between supply chain disruptions and government bond yields explain your methodology," she demanded. For 30 minutes, she grilled me with increasingly complex questions. I answered each one without hesitation, explaining the pattern recognition system I'd developed for identifying market inefficiencies. Finally, she nodded. "Have coffee with me tomorrow. 7 a.m., Blue Bottle on Lexington." That coffee meeting became a weekly occurrence. Diana became more than a mentor. She became the professional role model my mother had never been. Under her guidance, I refined my investment approach, focusing on what Diana called anticipatory economics, identifying the ripple effects of current events before the market recognized them. "Most investors react," Diana explained. "Exceptional ones anticipate." Meanwhile, Jason had abandoned his supposed business venture entirely. After failing to graduate on time, he'd finally received his degree and bounced between entry-level positions, never lasting more than a few months at each. Yet whenever I called home, my parents extolled his latest job as if he were a corporate wunderkind. "Jason's been hired by Merrill Lynch," my mother announced proudly during one call. I nearly dropped my phone. Merrill Lynch was a prestigious firm. Had my brother finally found his footing? When I inquired about his role, the truth emerged in fragments. He wasn't in investment banking or wealth management, but in an administrative support position, which he'd obtained through one of Dad's old college friends. Still, my parents spoke as if he were on the fast track to becoming CEO. During this time, I began implementing my own investment strategy with my modest savings. While my colleagues spent their bonuses on designer clothes and exclusive clubs, I lived frugally and invested aggressively, focusing on the sectors my research identified as undervalued. Diana noticed my passion for personal investing and offered guidance that proved invaluable. The truly wealthy don't follow trends, she advised. They create their positions before the trend exists. 2 years into my career, my investments had grown impressively. I'd developed a particular talent for identifying tech companies with breakthrough potential before they became market darlings. A $5,000 investment in a cloud security startup had returned nearly $50,000 when they were acquired by a larger firm. Similar strategic bets continued to pay off. During the Thanksgiving holiday that year, I returned home to Connecticut. Jason arrived in a new BMW, though I knew from my mother's offhand comments that he was between jobs again. My father dominated dinner conversation with talk about Jason's connections and how he was positioned for something big. When I mentioned my recent promotion at Goldman, my father nodded distractedly before turning back to Jason. After dinner, my mother pulled me aside while Jason and Dad watched football. "We're so excited," she whispered. "Jason's buying a house." I raised an eyebrow. "With what money?" She looked affronted. "Your father and I are helping with the down payment, of course. It's in Greenwich, you should see it. 5 bedrooms, a pool, beautiful landscaping." "That sounds expensive," I commented cautiously. "Well, it's important to invest in property," she replied. "Your father and I want at least one of our children to have a beautiful home." I couldn't resist asking, "What about my apartment?" She laughed as if I'd told a joke. "Oh, honey, that little rental? We're talking about real property ownership, something substantial." Later that evening, as the conversation circled back to Jason's house purchase, my father turned to me with what he probably thought was benevolent advice. "You should learn from your brother's example, Megan. This is how you build real wealth through property." When I mentioned that I was considering purchasing an apartment in New York, he waved his hand dismissively. "Manhattan real estate is overpriced. Besides," he added with a chuckle that cut like glass, "you'll never own a house like your brother. You don't think big enough." The words hung in the air like poison. My mother nodded in agreement, while Jason smirked behind his wine glass. In that moment, something crystallized within me. The anger and hurt transmuted into cold, clear resolve. I would not just succeed, I would succeed so spectacularly that their dismissal would choke them. Back in New York, I called Diana. "I need to accelerate my investment strategy," I told her. "I've been playing it too safe." Over the next 3 days, Diana helped me develop an aggressive but sound investment approach that would maximize growth while maintaining reasonable risk parameters. I redirected all my energies toward this plan, working my day job with renewed intensity while spending evenings analyzing potential opportunities. Around this time, I also met Brandon Wilson, a brilliant strategist who had recently joined the firm. With his analytical mind and wry humor, Brandon quickly became both a trusted colleague and a potential romantic interest. Unlike the men I dated previously, he seemed genuinely impressed by my financial acumen rather than intimidated by it. "Most people talk about taking calculated risks," he commented after I'd explained one of my investment theories. "You actually calculate them." As I built my career and investment portfolio, I kept a photo on my desk, not of my family, but of a magnificent Hamptons estate I'd clipped from a luxury real estate magazine. When colleagues asked about it, I simply said it was a goal. What I didn't tell them was that it represented more than a house. It was the physical manifestation of proving my father wrong. Beneath the photo, I'd written a promise to myself. One day, I'll own a house that will make them eat their words. 3 years after my father's cutting remark, my career and personal investment portfolio had both flourished beyond what even I had anticipated. At Goldman, I had been promoted twice, now leading a team specializing in emerging technologies and alternative investments. My reputation for identifying winning opportunities before they became obvious to the broader market had earned me both respect and envy within the firm. Simultaneously, I had launched a boutique investment advisory service, MW Advisory, focusing on high net worth clients looking for sophisticated, non traditional investment strategies. Starting with just 3 clients referred by Diana, my side business had grown to serve 27 clients with assets totaling over $30 million under my advisement. I operated MW Advisory out of a small but elegant office in the Flatiron District, working evenings and weekends around my Goldman schedule. The exhausting pace was worth it. My personal net worth had crossed into 7 figures, and I was finally purchasing my own apartment, a sleek 1-bedroom in a doorman building on the Upper East Side. My relationship with Brandon had deepened as well. We moved in careful circles around each other at work, maintaining professionalism, but spent many evenings together strategizing over investment opportunities and eventually sharing more personal dreams. His ambition matched my own, though his was tempered with a warmth my drive sometimes lacked. "You're brilliant at the game, Megan," he told me one evening as we reviewed market trends. "But don't forget that wealth is ultimately just a means to something else." "Like what?" I asked. "Like freedom, security, the ability to live your life on your own terms." His words stayed with me, though I wasn't ready to admit that my obsessive focus on success was fueled more by family wounds than by personal fulfillment. Then, just as everything was flourishing, I received devastating news. Grandma Lillian had been diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was grim: months, not years. I immediately rearranged my schedule to visit her in Connecticut every weekend. Unlike my parents, who viewed her illness primarily as an inconvenience, I recognized that Grandma Lillian had been my only true family advocate. During these visits, we talked about everything from market trends to personal philosophy. During one visit, she held my hand with surprising strength for someone so ill. "I've been watching you, Megan," she said. "You're succeeding brilliantly, but you're letting their voices drive you." "What do you mean?" "Success as revenge is still giving them power over you." Her eyes, still sharp despite her illness, held mine. "Build your empire, my dear, but build it for yourself, not to prove them wrong." 2 weeks later, she called me to her bedside. Without my parents present, she told me she was adjusting her will. "I'm giving you part of your inheritance now," she explained. $100,000. The rest will come later, but I want to see you use this while I'm still here." When I protested, she squeezed my hand. "I've always invested in potential, Megan. You're the best investment I could make." The advance inheritance arrived in my account the following week. I was deeply moved by her faith in me and immediately began formulating plans for how to honor her gift by growing it through my investment strategy. However, word of the inheritance spread quickly through the family grapevine. Within days, Jason appeared at my apartment door in New York, something that had never happened before. "Hey sis," he said with the charming smile that had always worked on our parents. "I heard about Grandma's gift. That's fantastic." I invited him in warily, offering coffee but not information. After 20 minutes of uncharacteristic interest in my life, he finally revealed his purpose. "So, I've been talking with Mom and Dad about your inheritance," he began casually. "We think it would be perfect for the family investment fund." "What family investment fund?" I asked, genuinely confused. "The one I'm starting," Jason explained with unearned confidence. "I've been developing connections in private equity. This seed money would be perfect to launch a fund that could benefit all of us." When I didn't immediately agree, his manner shifted. "Mom and Dad think it's the right thing to do," he added, a subtle reminder of where family loyalties typically fell. I asked for details of his business plan, his management strategy, his market analysis. He had none, just vague assertions about exclusive opportunities and insider connections. "I need to think about it," I said, showing him to the door. That evening, my phone exploded with texts and calls from both parents, expressing disappointment that I wasn't being a team player and reminding me that family supports family. The pressure campaign continued for days. Finally, I agreed to a family dinner at my parents' house to discuss the matter. What I didn't tell them was that I'd done my research. Jason's connections in private equity were virtually non-existent. His latest job, which he'd described to our parents as VP of Client Development at a boutique investment firm, was actually a commission-only sales position he'd already been fired from. He had been systematically lying to our parents about his career achievements while continuing to receive their financial support. At dinner, I calmly declined to invest in Jason's non-existent fund. "I've already allocated Grandma's gift towards specific investment opportunities," I explained. "You always were selfish," my mother snapped, mask finally dropping. "After everything we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked quietly. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "We supported you," my father finally said, though his tone lacked conviction. "No," I replied. "I put myself through college. I built my career without connections. I've never received financial help from either of you since high school." "That's because you didn't need it," my mother interjected. "Jason has had a harder path." The conversation devolved from there. Jason, seeing his scheme failing, finally revealed his true colors. "You think you're so special with your fancy job and your investments," he snarled. "But everyone knows you only got where you are because you're a woman in finance. Diversity hire." The naked hostility shocked even our parents, creating an opening for a truth I'd long suspected but never confirmed. "Is that what you've been telling them?" I asked, suddenly understanding years of dismissive comments from my parents. That my success isn't real? Jason's expression confirmed my suspicion before he could deny it. For years, he had been actively sabotaging my relationship with our parents, feeding them distorted versions of my achievements, suggesting my success was due to luck or preferential treatment. "You've been lying about your own career," I continued, while undermining mine. My father attempted to intervene, but I laid out everything I'd discovered about Jason's actual employment situation. My parents' expressions shifted from anger to confusion to the beginning glimmers of doubt. As I prepared to leave, my mother followed me to the door. "Why are you doing this to your brother?" she asked, still unable to see the reality of the situation. "I'm not doing anything to him," I replied. "I'm simply refusing to fund his lies anymore. And neither should you." Driving back to New York that night, I called Grandma Lillian from the car. "You were right," I told her. "I need to build my life for me, not in response to them." 2 weeks later, Grandma Lillian passed away peacefully. Her funeral was a somber affair, made more tense by the unresolved family conflict. The reading of her will revealed that she had left me the bulk of her estate, approximately $300,000 more, along with her personal journals and a letter. The letter, which I read alone in my apartment that night, contained wisdom that would reshape my approach to success. "Dearest Megan, if you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. My greatest hope is that you'll use what I've left you to build not just wealth, but a life of purpose. Your parents and brother are trapped in patterns they can't see. Your freedom lies in recognizing those patterns without being bound by them. Success is the best revenge, but peace is the ultimate victory. I believe in you, always have, always will. With all my love, Grandma Lillian." With tears streaming down my face, I made a decision. I would continue pursuing success, but I would do it on my terms, driven by my own vision rather than family wounds. The next morning, I submitted my resignation to Goldman Sachs to focus full-time on growing MW Advisory. When Brandon asked why I was leaving the security of Goldman, I showed him Grandma Lillian's letter. "She's right," he said after reading it. "And for what it's worth, I believe in you too." What neither of us knew then was that my journey toward both success and healing had only just begun, and that the pattern of family betrayal was far from over. 2 years after leaving Goldman Sachs, MW Advisory had transformed from a side business into a formidable boutique investment firm. What began with 27 clients had grown to over 200, with assets under management exceeding $500 million. I had expanded into elegant offices in Midtown, hired a staff of 15 professionals, and established a reputation for exceptional returns, even during market volatility. My investment approach, combining meticulous research with the anticipatory economics Diana had taught me, proved particularly valuable during a period of global market uncertainty. While other firms posted losses, my clients saw their portfolios grow. Financial media took notice. I was featured in Bloomberg, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal as an investment manager to watch. With success came personal financial freedom. My net worth had multiplied several times over, allowing me to upgrade to a stunning penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. More importantly, I had begun to find balance, taking occasional vacations, developing friendships outside of work, and even exploring my interest in abstract art. Brandon and I had grown closer, though we maintained separate residences. His steady presence helped temper my workaholic tendencies, while my drive pushed him to pursue opportunities he might otherwise have overlooked. We made a formidable team professionally and a supportive partnership personally. My relationship with my family, however, remained strained. After the confrontation over Grandma Lillian's inheritance, communication had dwindled to obligatory holiday calls and the occasional text message. Jason had apparently found another sales position but continued to live beyond his means with parental support. The Greenwich house, I learned from my mother's social media posts, had been downsized to a more modest property due to changing priorities, which I suspected meant financial reality finally asserting itself. Despite my reservations, I agreed to attend a family dinner when my parents visited New York for their anniversary. My hope was that time and distance might have brought perspective. Perhaps my professional success, now undeniable and publicly recognized, would finally earn their respect. The dinner began awkwardly but cordially. My mother commented on my expensive-looking apartment without congratulating me on being able to afford it. My father asked perfunctory questions about my business without showing real interest in the answers. Jason was notably absent, having canceled at the last minute due to a client emergency. As coffee was served, my mother broached what appeared to be the real purpose of the visit. "We're so proud of how well you're doing, dear," she said, her tone suddenly warm. "And we have some exciting news. Jason is launching a new investment initiative, something truly groundbreaking." My heart sank. The pattern was repeating itself. "What kind of initiative?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "It's a specialized fund for high net worth individuals," my father explained, with enthusiasm that seemed rehearsed. "Targeting the exact clientele you work with." "I see," I replied, already suspecting where this was heading. "And he has the necessary registrations and compliance framework in place?" My parents exchanged glances, clearly not understanding the regulatory requirements of investment management. "Well, that's actually why we wanted to talk to you," my mother continued. "Jason thought perhaps you could introduce him to some of your clients, just to help him get started." The audacity was breathtaking. After years of dismissing my career, they now wanted access to the client relationships I had painstakingly built. "That would be inappropriate," I said firmly, "and potentially illegal without proper licensing." My father's expression hardened. "You always did make things more complicated than necessary. This is about helping your brother." "My clients trust me with their financial futures," I explained. "I can't violate that trust." The conversation deteriorated from there, ending with my mother in tears, and my father suggesting once again that I was selfish for not supporting family. The following week brought an unexpected development. Harold Mercer, one of my largest clients, requested an urgent meeting. Harold was typically hands-off about his 8-figure portfolio, trusting my management implicitly, so the urgency was unusual. When he arrived at my office, his discomfort was immediately apparent. "Megan, I received an interesting call yesterday," he began awkwardly. "From someone claiming to be your brother." My stomach dropped. "My brother contacted you directly?" Harold nodded. "He said he was working with you on a new, exclusive investment opportunity, and that you had suggested he reach out to me specifically." As Harold detailed the conversation, the extent of Jason's deception became clear. He had somehow obtained my client list and was systematically contacting my top clients, implying a partnership that didn't exist. I thanked Harold for bringing this to my attention and immediately called an emergency meeting with my legal team. By evening, we had drafted cease and desist letters and prepared for potential regulatory issues. But I needed to address this directly. I drove to Connecticut the next morning, arriving unannounced at my parents' house, where Jason was currently living between apartments. When I confronted him with evidence of his client solicitations, he initially denied everything. "You're just paranoid," he scoffed. "Why would I need your clients when I have my own connections?" When I mentioned the specific details Harold had provided, Jason's demeanor changed. "Fine," he admitted. "I made a few calls. What's the big deal? We're family, we should be helping each other." "You lied to my clients and misrepresented our relationship," I countered. "That's not just unethical, it's potentially illegal." "Oh, please," he sneered. "Like you built your business entirely above board? Everyone knows women in finance sleep their way to the top." Before I could respond to this vile accusation, my mother walked into the room. I expected her to be shocked by Jason's behavior and language. Instead, she looked at me with cold anger. "Why are you attacking your brother again?" she demanded. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. "You knew," I realized aloud. "You gave him my client information." My mother's defensive posture confirmed my suspicion before she spoke. "I mentioned a few names I remembered you talking about," she admitted. "He's trying to get established. Someone in this family should help him." The betrayal was staggering. Not only had Jason attempted to poach my clients under false pretenses, but my own mother had actively facilitated it. "How did you get their contact information?" I pressed. My mother's gaze slid away. "I might have looked through your contact list when you were in the shower last time we visited your apartment." The violation of privacy searching through my personal belongings to undermine my business left me speechless. When I found my voice again, I addressed them both with a calm that belied my inner turmoil. "I'll be sending cease and desist letters to Jason and documentation of this incident to every client he contacted. If he approaches any more of my clients, I'll pursue legal action." "You would sue your own brother?" my mother gasped. "To protect my clients and my professional reputation? Absolutely." As I turned to leave, my mother called after me. "I never thought you'd turn out so cold. I just wanted you to help your brother succeed, too." I paused at the door. "Mom, did it ever occur to you that I would have willingly helped Jason if he'd approached me honestly? If he'd been willing to learn, to work, to build something legitimate? But he doesn't want to succeed, he wants shortcuts. And you've enabled that his entire life." The drive back to New York gave me time to process the magnitude of what had happened. My own mother had never believed I would succeed on merit. She had consistently undermined me while supporting Jason's schemes. It wasn't just favoritism, it was active sabotage. When I arrived home, Brandon was waiting with dinner and a sympathetic ear. After I recounted the confrontation, he held me while I finally allowed myself to cry. "You know what hurts the most?" I told him. "Even now, with all I've accomplished, they still don't see me." "Then maybe it's time to stop seeking their validation," he suggested gently. "You've built something remarkable, Megan, with or without their approval." The next morning, I met with Harold and my other top clients to explain the situation transparently. To my relief, they were understanding and even impressed by my professional handling of a difficult situation. "Your brother called me too," Diana revealed when I called her for advice. "I told him if he ever contacted me again, I'd report him to the SEC myself." In the aftermath, I made a difficult decision. I couldn't cut my family off entirely. They were still my parents, despite everything, but I needed firm boundaries. I drafted an email explaining that I would maintain limited contact but would not discuss business matters with them, nor would I attend any gathering where Jason was present until he acknowledged and apologized for his actions. My father responded with a terse, "If that's how you feel." My mother sent a lengthy guilt trip about family obligations. Jason never responded at all. Despite the personal turmoil, MWA Advisory continued to thrive. The publicity from a feature in Barron's brought new clients, and my investment strategies continued to outperform the market. My net worth crossed the eight-figure mark. a milestone I celebrated quietly with Brandon and a few close friends. One evening, browsing luxury real estate listings, a habit I'd developed as both market research and personal indulgence, I stumbled upon a property that took my breath away. A stunning waterfront estate in the Hamptons with panoramic ocean views, 7 bedrooms, meticulous gardens, and a fascinating history as a Prohibition-era mansion. The price tag was eye-watering, $5.2 million. Yet as I scrolled through the photos, something resonated deep within me. This wasn't just a house, it was a statement. A declaration of having arrived at a level my family had never believed possible for me. I bookmarked the listing, telling myself it was just aspiration, not a serious consideration. But over the next few weeks, I found myself returning to it repeatedly. "It's spectacular," Brandon commented when I finally showed him. "Are you considering it?" "It's extravagant," I demurred. "Beautiful, but probably impractical." "Since when is Megan Walsh afraid of making bold moves?" he teased. I scheduled a viewing, telling myself it was merely curiosity. But standing on the terrace overlooking the Atlantic, I felt a sense of rightness I couldn't explain. This wasn't about revenge or proving my worth anymore. It was about claiming the life I'd earned. What I didn't know then was that I wasn't the only Walsh with eyes on this particular property, and that the fourth and most devastating betrayal was yet to come. The Hamptons estate captivated me from the moment I stepped onto its immaculately landscaped grounds. Built in 1925 by a shipping magnate, the 7-bedroom mansion sat on 3 acres of oceanfront property, combining historic charm with modern luxury. The real estate agent, Vivian Sinclair, led me through light-filled rooms with soaring ceilings and panoramic ocean views. "The property has only had 4 owners in its entire history," Vivian explained as we stood on the wraparound porch, waves crashing against the private beach below. "The current owners are relocating to Europe and are motivated to sell, though they're committed to finding the right buyer who will appreciate the home's character." I tried to maintain a professional demeanor, but my mind was already racing with possibilities. This wasn't just a house, it was everything I'd worked for manifested in physical form. I could picture myself working in the wood-paneled library, entertaining clients on the stone terrace, swimming in the infinity pool that seemed to merge with the ocean horizon. "What's the market like for properties in this range?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Competitive," Vivian replied. "Especially for historic waterfront estates with this pedigree. I already have interest from several parties, including a notable tech entrepreneur and a private investor group." I thanked her for the tour and promised to be in touch soon. On the drive back to the city, I called Diana for her perspective. $5 million is substantial," she acknowledged. "But you can afford it without compromising your overall financial position. The question is whether you want to tie up that much capital in a single property." "It's not just any property," I explained, surprising myself with the emotional undertone in my voice. "It feels like a victory lap?" Diana suggested knowingly. "Something like that," I admitted. The following week, I arranged for a second viewing, this time bringing Brandon along. His architect's eye caught details I'd missed: the quality of the restoration work, the thoughtfulness of the modernization, the structural integrity that had allowed the house to weather nearly a century of coastal storms. "It's exceptional," he conceded as we walked the grounds. "I can see why you're drawn to it." I was prepared to make an offer when Vivian called with unexpected news. "I wanted to give you a heads up," she said, her tone carefully professional. "Another interested party has scheduled a viewing tomorrow. They've indicated serious interest." "May I ask who?" I inquired, curiosity piqued by her careful phrasing. "I normally wouldn't share this information, but since there's a potential connection, the other party is a Jason Walsh." "Any relation?" The name hit me like a physical blow. "Jason? Looking at a $5.2 million property? It was impossible, unless." "He's my brother," I confirmed, mind racing. "Though I'm surprised he's looking in this price range." "He mentioned working with a silent investor," Vivian added. "Said they were prepared to move quickly." After hanging up, I immediately called Rachel, who had become my closest confidant through the years of family drama. "It can't be coincidence," Rachel said after I explained the situation. "The housing market is enormous. What are the odds he'd fixate on exactly the same property?" "Astronomical," I agreed. "He must have found out I was interested somehow." The question was, how? I hadn't discussed the property with anyone in my family. The only people who knew were Brandon, Diana, and Rachel herself, all people I trusted implicitly. 3 days later, my father called our first direct communication in months. "Megan, I hate that things have been strained between us," he began, his tone conciliatory. "Your mother and I miss you." The abrupt change in attitude immediately raised my suspicions. "What's on your mind, Dad?" I asked, cutting through the pretense. He sighed heavily. "We're in a bit of a situation. Medical bills have been piling up, your mother's arthritis treatments, my cholesterol medication. Insurance doesn't cover everything." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said cautiously. "What are we talking about financially?" "About 75,000, he replied. "I wouldn't ask, but since you're doing so well." The amount was substantial, but not extraordinary given my current financial position. Still, something felt off. My parents had never mentioned health issues this serious before, and my mother's social media showed them traveling and dining out regularly, not the behavior of people burdened by medical debt. "Send me the bills," I offered. "I'll see what I can do." "We'd rather not share those details," my father replied quickly. "It's embarrassing enough asking for help." Now I was certain something wasn't right. To verify my suspicions, I hired a private investigator, something I would have considered unthinkable just a few years earlier. The investigator's report arrived 3 days later. There were no significant medical expenses for either parent. What the report did reveal was far more damning. Jason had established a new investment partnership with Alexander Prescott, CEO of Vertex Capital, one of MW Advisory's main competitors, and a firm known for aggressive, sometimes questionable tactics. Further digging revealed that Jason had been in talks with Prescott for months. Their apparent plan: acquire the Hamptons property I was interested in, then use it as leverage to pressure me into a merger with Vertex, effectively giving them access to my client list and investment strategies. The $75,000 my father had requested? It matched exactly the earnest money deposit needed to secure the property. The betrayal was breathtaking in its calculation. Jason hadn't stumbled upon the same property by coincidence, he had deliberately targeted it after learning of my interest. And my father wasn't facing medical bills, he was attempting to facilitate Jason's scheme. As I processed this information, another call came in, this time from Vivian. "I thought you should know," she said, her voice tight with professional restraint. "Jason Walsh has made an offer on the property. The owners are considering it, but wanted to give you the opportunity to counter if you're still interested." "What's the offer?" I asked. $5 million even, with a quick close and minimal contingencies. It was slightly under asking price, but structured to be attractive to sellers wanting certainty. I thanked Vivian and promised to be in touch within 24 hours. That evening, I called Brandon, Diana, and Rachel to my apartment, spreading the investigator's report on my dining table. "This goes beyond family dysfunction," Diana observed, reviewing the documents. "This is corporate espionage." "Prescott has wanted to absorb your firm for years," Brandon added. "Your client relationships and investment algorithms would be incredibly valuable to Vertex. The question is," Rachel said, "what are you going to do about it?" I stared out my window at the Manhattan skyline, thinking of Grandma Lillian's words about building my life for myself, not in reaction to my family. First, I decided, I'm going to secure that house. Not because Jason wants it, but because I do. The next morning, I called Vivian with my counter offer. $5.2 million, all cash, no contingencies, with a letter explaining my genuine appreciation for the property's history and my intention to preserve its character. Then I confronted my father directly, calling him from my office with the investigator's report in front of me. "There are no medical bills, are there?" I said when he answered. A long pause followed. "Megan, You were trying to help Jason secure the Hamptons property I'm interested in, I continued. The property he only knows about because someone has been feeding him information about my personal affairs. It's not what you think, my father attempted. Actually, it's worse than I initially thought, I countered. Jason isn't just trying to buy a house to spite me. He's working with Alexander Prescott to force a merger with my company. My father's silence was confirmation enough. Dad, I need you to understand something, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the hurt and anger churning inside me. I'm not just your daughter who happened to do well in finance. I've built something valuable enough that competitors are using my own family to try to get it. That should make you proud, not inspire you to undermine me. We are proud, he insisted weakly. We just want to help Jason too. By sabotaging me? That's not help, that's choosing sides. And you've been choosing the same side my entire life. As I hung up, a notification appeared on my phone, a text from Vivian. Congratulations. Sellers have accepted your offer. They appreciated your letter and cash terms. The victory felt hollow in the wake of discovering my family's latest betrayal. Even Brandon's supportive embrace when I shared the news couldn't fully dispel the sadness beneath my triumph. That evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, I revisited Grandma Lillian's journals, seeking wisdom from the only family member who had truly believed in me. In an entry from 20 years earlier, I found words that resonated deeply. Betrayal from strangers is expected. From family, it cuts to the bone. But our wounds can become our wisdom if we refuse to let bitterness take root. I closed the journal, took a deep breath, and made another decision. I would complete the purchase of the Hamptons estate not as a trophy or statement, but as a sanctuary. A place to heal, to celebrate, to build the life I wanted on my terms. What I didn't anticipate was how Jason would react to losing this particular battle, or that the most dramatic confrontation was yet to come. The weeks following my accepted offer on the Hamptons estate should have been filled with the excitement of pending homeownership. Instead, they brought a coordinated attack on everything I had built. It began with a call from Harold Mercer, the same client who had alerted me to Jason's earlier solicitations. Megan, I've received some concerning information about MW Advisory, he said, discomfort evident in his voice. I wanted to speak with you directly before making any decisions. Harold forwarded an anonymous email he'd received, containing allegations that my firm engaged in front-running the illegal practice of trading ahead of client orders to profit from market movements. The email included doctored statements and transaction records that, to an untrained eye, seemed to support the accusations. Before I could fully address Harold's concerns, 3 more clients called with similar questions. By afternoon, the trickle had become a flood. Nearly 24 clients had received identical emails, and financial blogs had begun picking up the story. It's a coordinated smear campaign, Diana confirmed after reviewing the materials. Sophisticated enough to seem credible, but the evidence falls apart under scrutiny. I immediately assembled my legal and compliance teams, drafted a point-by-point refutation of the allegations, and personally called each client to address concerns. Most were reassured, but the damage was spreading. 2 clients withdrew their funds outright, and 4 more placed their accounts on hold, pending further investigation. That evening, Brandon arrived at my apartment looking uncharacteristically grim. I heard about the allegations, he said. How are you holding up? Barely, I admitted, exhaustion evident in my voice. We've been fighting fires all day. I might know where this is coming from, Brandon said carefully. Vertex Capital has been approaching people in the industry, asking questions about your operation, suggesting they have concerns about your practices. Prescott, I muttered, and Jason. Almost certainly, Brandon agreed. This has their fingerprints all over it. The attacks continued. Financial news outlets ran stories with headlines like "Questions Surround Rising Star Fund Manager" and "MW Advisory Under Scrutiny." The Securities and Exchange Commission contacted us requesting documentation, a routine response to public allegations, but nerve-wracking nonetheless. Client withdrawals accelerated. In just 10 days, we lost nearly $80 million in assets under management. My carefully built reputation was unraveling with breathtaking speed. Then came the second blow. Vivian called with devastating news. "I'm sorry to inform you that the sellers are considering backing out of our agreement," she said, professional facade cracking slightly. "They've received another offer substantially above asking price." "That's not possible," I countered. "We have a signed contract." "They're claiming that material information about the buyer you has come to light that would have affected their decision," Vivian explained. "Their attorney is arguing that the negative publicity surrounding your firm constitutes grounds for voiding the agreement." The pieces clicked into place. The smear campaign wasn't just about damaging my business, it was also designed to derail my purchase of the Hamptons estate. "Who made the new offer?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Jason Walsh, representing an investment partnership," Vivian confirmed. $5.5 million, all cash. The 1-2 punch of the business crisis and potentially losing the house left me reeling. For the first time since starting my career, I considered whether I might be truly defeated. Everything I'd built was at risk: my company, my reputation, and now the house that had come to symbolize my ultimate triumph over my family's low expectations. That night, in my darkest moment, I found myself sitting on my apartment floor, surrounded by legal documents and crisis management plans, with no clear path forward. I pulled out Grandma Lillian's journal and opened it to a random page. "The most successful people I've known," she had written, "aren't those who never faced defeat, but those who refuse to accept it as final." True resilience isn't avoiding the fall, it's having the courage to get back up, perhaps in an entirely new direction. A new direction. The phrase lingered in my mind as I considered my options. I had been playing defense, responding to allegations, trying to retain clients, fighting to keep the house purchase alive. But defense alone wouldn't win this battle. I needed to reclaim the initiative. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was facing. I called the private investigator who had uncovered Jason's connection to Prescott and authorized a deeper investigation into their activities. While awaiting those results, I formulated a multi-pronged strategy. On the business front, I would go beyond merely defending my reputation. I would showcase our investment methodology with unprecedented transparency. On the personal front, I would uncover whatever leverage might exist to secure the Hamptons property. The investigator's report arrived 3 days later, and its contents were more valuable than I could have hoped. Alexander Prescott had a history of aggressive tactics that occasionally crossed ethical lines, but the report revealed something far more damaging. Vertex Capital had been engaged in actual front-running, the very practice they had falsely accused me of. The evidence was compelling. Trading patterns that showed Vertex consistently executing transactions just before large client orders, emails discussing how to maximize profit opportunities from advanced knowledge of client positions, and internal communications referencing special handling for certain accounts. I took this information to Brandon, who had connections at the SEC from his previous work. "This is explosive," he said, after reviewing the evidence. "If verified, it could trigger a major investigation into Vertex and completely discredit their accusations against me," I added. I faced a moral and strategic dilemma. Using this information would likely devastate Vertex Capital and, by extension, Jason's latest venture. It would be the nuclear option, potentially harming not just the guilty parties but innocent employees and clients as well. Yet the alternative was watching my own innocent employees and clients suffer from false accusations. After careful deliberation, I decided on a targeted approach. I would submit the evidence to regulators anonymously, allowing proper investigation without appearing vindictive. Simultaneously, I would share select information with key industry figures who could help rehabilitate MW Advisory's reputation. Brandon's SEC contacts confirmed receipt of the evidence and indicated it was being taken seriously. Within days, Industry rumors began circulating about a potential investigation into Vertex, shifting attention away from my firm. I also discovered something unexpected through Rachel, who had maintained connections in Princeton's alumni network. Jason had misrepresented his credentials to Prescott, claiming honors and achievements he'd never earned. This explained Prescott's willingness to partner with someone of Jason's limited experience. He believed he was getting a Princeton business wunderkind. With this information, I made a calculated decision. I contacted Prescott directly, requesting a private meeting. To my surprise, he agreed. In his sleek Midtown office, I laid out what I knew both about Vertex's trading practices and Jason's fraudulent credentials. "I'm not here to threaten you," I said calmly. "I'm here to propose a mutual de-escalation. Withdraw your support from the campaign against my firm, and I'll ensure this information doesn't become public beyond the regulatory investigation that's already underway." Prescott's face remained impassive, but the slight tremor in his hand as he adjusted his tie revealed his discomfort. "And the Hamptons property?" he asked, confirming his involvement in that aspect of the scheme. "Withdraw your funding for that as well," I replied. "Let the original contract proceed." After a long silence, Prescott nodded. "I'll need assurances." "As will I countered. We hammered out an agreement that protected both parties' core interests while ending hostilities. By the time I left his office, I had secured not just a cessation of the smear campaign, but also the withdrawal of Vertex's backing for Jason's counteroffer on the Hamptons estate. The recovery began almost immediately. News of the potential investigation into Vertex spread through financial circles, drawing attention away from the fabricated allegations against MW Advisory. Clients who had placed their accounts on hold began returning, and new inquiries increased as our transparency measures built confidence. Vivian called with news that the sellers were honoring our original contract, having been advised that their legal position for backing out was tenuous at best. "The closing is back on track," she confirmed. "We can proceed as originally planned." As I hung up the phone, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief at having weathered the storm, pride in having done so ethically, sadness at the depths to which my family had sunk, and a quiet determination to finally break free from toxic patterns. That evening, I revisited the folders of evidence I had accumulated regarding Jason's deceptions and my parents' enabling behavior. After thoughtful consideration, I made one final decision. It was time for a full reckoning with my family. I scheduled the confrontation for the weekend before the closing on the Hamptons house, timing that would prove more significant than I could have imagined. The drive to my parents' Connecticut home felt both familiar and foreign, like revisiting the scene of a long-ago battle. Autumn leaves carpeted their winding driveway in shades of amber and crimson as I pulled up to the colonial house where my childhood dreams had been systematically diminished. I had called ahead, requesting a family meeting to discuss important matters. My mother had sounded cautiously pleased at the prospect of reconciliation. What she didn't know was that this wasn't a peace offering, but a final accounting. Brandon had offered to accompany me, but this was a journey I needed to make alone. Some confrontations require solitary courage. My father answered the door, his expression a careful neutral. "Megan, good to see you." The greeting was stiff, perfunctory. My mother appeared behind him, offering a tentative smile. "We've missed you, dear." I returned their greetings with polite detachment as I stepped into the foyer. The house smelled the same: Mom's cinnamon potpourri, Dad's leather armchair, the faint mustiness of old books. For a moment, I was 12 again, bringing home straight A's to parents who barely noticed. "Jason will be joining us shortly," my mother added, leading me to the living room. "He had some business to wrap up." I nodded, unsurprised. Jason had always made others wait, secure in the knowledge that the rules of punctuality and consideration applied differently to him. We engaged in stilted small talk until Jason arrived 30 minutes later, striding in without apology for his tardiness. He froze momentarily upon seeing me, then recovered with a practiced smile. "Sis," he acknowledged with a nod. Mom said you wanted a family meeting. I waited until everyone was seated before speaking. I'm here because I believe in closure, I began. Before I move forward with my life, I need to address what's happened between us. If this is about that misunderstanding with the house, Jason started. It's about a lifetime of misunderstandings, I interrupted firmly, and deliberate deceptions. I removed a folder from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. This contains documentation of every significant betrayal I've experienced from this family, I explained. The $30,000 I loaned Jason that went to his Audi. Mom searching through my apartment to steal client information. Dad's fake medical bills story. And most recently, the coordinated attempt to destroy my business and steal a property I was purchasing. My mother's face paled. My father shifted uncomfortably. Jason maintained a mask of indignation. These are wild accusations, he scoffed. They're documented facts, I corrected, opening the folder. Bank transfers, private investigator reports, witness statements, email records. I turned to my mother first. Mom, you've enabled Jason his entire life, making excuses for his failures while dismissing my successes. But going through my personal belongings to steal professional contacts? That crossed from favoritism into criminal behavior. My mother's eyes welled with tears. I just wanted to help him, she whispered. By harming me, I pointed out. That's not help, that's sabotage. I turned to my father. Dad, you taught me that character and hard work matter above all. Yet you've supported Jason's shortcuts and schemes while dismissing my legitimate achievements. You told me I'd never own a house like Jason's. Was that because you knew I would earn something far better through honest work, while he needed your financial support and connections? My father couldn't hold my gaze. His eyes dropped to his hands, weathered and spotted with age. Finally, I addressed Jason directly. And you've spent your entire life resenting my success instead of creating your own. You've lied, cheated, and manipulated to maintain the fiction that you're the successful one, the deserving one. You partnered with Alexander Prescott to destroy my reputation and steal my clients. Prescott approached me, Jason countered defensively. He recognized my potential. Prescott approached you because he wanted access to my investment strategies and client relationships, I corrected. And he's abandoned your partnership, by the way. Your funding for the Hamptons house has been withdrawn. Jason's face contorted with anger. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Little Megan, the financial genius. You have no idea what it's like living in your shadow. My shadow? I repeated incredulously. I've spent my entire life in yours. The difference is that I built something real while you crafted illusions. The room fell silent as the weight of truth settled around us. Decades of family dynamics laid bare in the stark light of accountability. My mother broke the silence. We never meant to hurt you, Megan. We just worried about Jason more. He seemed to need us in a way you didn't. That's the problem, I replied softly. You confused independence with not needing support. Everyone needs support, Mom. I just stopped asking for it when it became clear it wasn't available to me. My father cleared his throat. Your grandmother always said you were the strong one. Strong doesn't mean invulnerable, I countered. And using my strength as an excuse to withhold love and recognition was deeply unfair. As the conversation continued, layers of family mythology began to unravel. My mother gradually acknowledged her pattern of enabling Jason at my expense. My father struggled to reconcile his professed values with his actual behavior over the years. Only Jason remained entrenched in denial and resentment. So what now? He demanded. You've made your accusations. You've proven you're better than all of us. What do you want? I don't want anything from you, I replied truthfully. I'm not here to extract apologies or promises. I'm here to speak my truth and then release the burden of seeking your approval or understanding. I turned back to my parents. I'm closing on the Hamptons house next week. $5.2 million, paid in cash, earned through my own work and investment acumen. I'm not telling you this to brag, but to make something clear. I've succeeded not because of your support, but despite its absence. My father's expression reflected a complex mixture of shame and pride. I was wrong, he admitted quietly, about what you could achieve. It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to receive from him. My mother reached across the coffee table to touch my hand. I've been a poor mother to you in many ways, she acknowledged, tears flowing freely now. I convinced myself that favoring Jason was balancing the scales, but the truth is that I simply found it easier to support the child who struggled than to celebrate the one who soared. Her words pierced a lifetime of emotional armor. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine connection with my mother, not because she was suddenly the parent I had needed, but because she was finally seeing me clearly. Jason stood abruptly. "This is bullshit," he spat. "You come here with your accusations and your success story, making mom cry and dad apologize. You've always needed to be the center of attention." "Jason," my mother said sharply, surprising all of us. "Enough." He stared at her in disbelief. "You're taking her side now?" "I'm acknowledging the truth," she replied. "Something you might consider trying." Jason stormed out, slamming the front door with such force that the family photos rattled on the walls. I spent another hour with my parents, having the most honest conversation of our lives. There were no miraculous transformations or complete reconciliations. Decades of patterns couldn't be undone in an afternoon, but there was recognition, the essential first step toward healing. As I prepared to leave, my mother asked hesitantly, "Will we see the house sometime?" "Maybe," I replied, not making promises I wasn't sure I could keep. "I need time." My father nodded in understanding. "You've earned that time," he said, "and everything else you've achieved." Driving back to New York, I felt lighter than I had in years. The confrontation hadn't fixed my family, but it had freed me from the exhausting cycle of seeking validation where it had never been available. What I didn't realize was that Jason had one final move to make, one that would bring our lifelong rivalry to its ultimate conclusion on the very doorstep of my new home. The morning of the closing dawned bright and clear, a perfect autumn day on Long Island. I drove out early, wanting time to process the enormity of what I was about to do. $5.2 million for a house was an astronomical sum by any standard, yet it represented less than half my net worth, a testament to how far I'd come from the struggling college student working 3 jobs to pay tuition. The closing itself was surprisingly anticlimactic: signatures on documents, wire transfer confirmations, handshakes with attorneys and the seller's representatives. When Vivian handed me the keys, the weight of them in my palm felt both substantial and surreal. "Congratulations, Miss Walsh," she said warmly. "The house is yours." I drove directly to the estate afterward, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and solitude as I pulled through the ornate gates. The house looked even more magnificent than I remembered, its stone facade glowing in the afternoon sun, waves crashing rhythmically on the private beach below. Standing on the terrace overlooking the Atlantic, I called Rachel first. "I just became the owner of a Hamptons mansion," I told her, still processing the reality myself. "I never doubted you would," she replied. "Not from the day we met." Diana was my second call. "How does it feel?" she asked after I shared the news. "Surreal," I admitted. "Beautiful but a little hollow." "Achievement often is, until you decide what it means," she observed sagely. "The challenge isn't getting what you want, it's wanting what you get once you have it." I spent the next hour wandering through empty rooms that were now mine, my footsteps echoing on hardwood floors that had supported generations of previous owners. In the library, I set down Grandma Lillian's journals, the first items I'd brought to my new home. It seemed fitting that her wisdom would be the foundation upon which I'd build this next chapter. The sound of tires on gravel drew me to the front window. A familiar BMW had pulled into the circular driveway. "Jason." For a moment, I considered not answering the door. After our confrontation days earlier, what more could possibly be said? But curiosity, or perhaps a desire for final resolution, led me down the grand staircase and across the marble foyer. I opened the massive front door to find my brother standing there, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "May I come in?" he asked, his usual bravado absent. I hesitated, then stepped aside. We walked in silence to the conservatory, a sun-drenched space with panoramic views of the grounds and ocean beyond. "So you got it after all," Jason said finally, gazing around at the soaring ceilings and intricate moldings. "Yes," I replied simply. "It's incredible," he admitted, "better than I imagined." We stood in awkward silence until Jason spoke again. "I've been thinking about what you said. About me spending my life resenting your success instead of creating my own." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I recognized from childhood. "You're right. I've been living in a fantasy, taking shortcuts, depending on mom and dad to clean up my messes." The admission was so unexpected that I wasn't sure how to respond. "Why this house?" I asked instead. "Of all the properties on the market, why did you target the exact one I was interested in?" Jason's laugh held no humor. "Because you wanted it," he said simply. "My whole life has been about trying to take what you have, or prevent you from getting what I couldn't have." His honesty was startling. "That's remarkably self-aware," I observed. "Don't give me too much credit," he replied. "It took losing everything to see it. Prescott dropped me completely, apparently. You have something on him. The Greenwich house is being foreclosed on. Mom and Dad finally cut me off financially after your visit." I felt a complex mix of emotions, satisfaction that consequences had finally arrived, pity for the brother who had never developed the skills to succeed honestly, caution about whether this apparent epiphany was genuine. "What will you do now?" I asked. "Start over," he said with a shrug. "Get a real job. Pay my own way for once." He glanced around the magnificent room. "Obviously, I'll never have anything like this. But maybe I can build something authentic on a smaller scale." "It's not about the house, Jason," I said quietly. "It never was. It's about creating something meaningful through your own efforts." He nodded slowly. "I think I'm finally beginning to understand that." As Jason prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "I can't undo the things I did to you," he said, "but I am sorry, for whatever that's worth." I didn't offer forgiveness that might come with time and evidence of genuine change, but I acknowledged his apology with a nod. It was a beginning, if not a resolution. After he drove away, I returned to the terrace, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. I pulled out my phone and called Brandon. "How did the closing go?" he asked. "Perfectly," I replied. "And you won't believe who just left Jason." After explaining the unexpected visit, I asked, "When can you come out? I want to show you everything." "I'll leave now," he promised. "Be there in 2 hours." Later that evening, as Brandon and I shared a bottle of champagne on the terrace, Diana and Rachel arrived with an impromptu housewarming gift, a beautiful piece of abstract art for the entryway. "To new beginnings," Diana toasted, raising her glass. "And to the woman who never stopped believing in herself, even when everyone told her she should." The four of us spent the evening planning what the house could become, not just a residence, but a gathering place, a sanctuary, perhaps even the future headquarters for a philanthropic foundation I'd been considering, focused on supporting young women in finance. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected call from my mother. "I wondered if I might visit," she said tentatively. "Just me, not your father. I'd like to see your new home, but more importantly, I'd like to really get to know my daughter. If you're willing." It wasn't complete reconciliation, but it was a step toward a healthier relationship. I agreed to a visit the following weekend. When she arrived, I gave her the grand tour, watching as she took in the magnificence of what I had achieved entirely on my own. "It's extraordinary," she said as we settled in the garden. "But not as extraordinary as you are." Our conversation that day was the first of many as we slowly began building a relationship based on who we actually were, not the roles we had been assigned in our family narrative. My father remained more distant, though he sent a handwritten letter acknowledging his failure to recognize my potential and expressing pride in the woman I had become. Jason and I maintained minimal contact, though I heard through my mother that he had found a sales position with a software company and was, for the first time, supporting himself completely. As for me, I began the process of transforming the house into a home that reflected my values and vision. The formal dining room became a space for strategy sessions with my expanding team. The grounds hosted gatherings for female entrepreneurs and financial professionals. One bedroom became a memorial of sorts to Grandma Lillian, housing her journals, photographs, and the business ideas she had encouraged when no one else would. 6 months after moving in, I established the Lillian Walsh Foundation, dedicated to providing mentorship, education, and seed capital to young women pursuing careers in finance and entrepreneurship. The Foundation's first initiative was a scholarship program for girls from under-resourced communities, girls whose potential, like mine, might otherwise be overlooked. On the anniversary of my grandmother's passing, I sat alone on the beach, watching waves crash against the shore as the setting sun painted the sky in shades of amber and gold. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from a dismissed daughter to a successful businesswoman, from seeking validation to creating value, from reacting to family wounds to building a life of purpose. The house around me was more than just a symbol of financial success. It had become the foundation for a legacy far more meaningful than proving my father wrong. It represented the freedom to define success on my own terms, to use my success to elevate others, and to finally break free from the expectations that had constrained me. The little girl who had once filled Grandma Lillian's journal with business ideas had grown into a woman who had not just achieved financial independence, but had found something far more precious: authentic self-worth and the courage to live truthfully. As darkness fell and stars appeared above the Atlantic, I made one final entry in my grandmother's journal. The greatest revenge isn't proving others wrong about you, it's proving yourself right about yourself. What challenges have you overcome to achieve your dreams? I'd love to hear your stories of triumph over adversity in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this journey resonated with you, and share with someone who might need a reminder of their own strength and potential. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey. And remember, success isn't measured by what others think of you, but by staying true to yourself and lifting others as you climb.